For those who don't know me, I'm Darlene McLennan. I'm the manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, or ADCET for short. Hopefully you kind of understood a little bit about our work today, and I know a lot of the presenters have been spruiking the great work that we do. So yes, I'm sure we're going to get lots of emails and sign-ups to our newsletters and so forth afterwards. So I really have been blown away. It's been quite a nerve-wracking thing to put a face-to-face event on. We are very used to doing things online. We do things online every 2 weeks. This is one of the first face-to-face we've done for many years. So thank you for bearing with us online and in person, because I know there's been some hiccups, but you've all been managing those with smiles and no one's come up to me grumpy yet, so I'm very happy with that. So thank you for being so generous. And that's the feedback I've been getting from everybody, that everybody's so generous and really happy to share and cooperate. So that's been absolutely fabulous. And I know that there's going to be a lot of networking going on, continuing on from this session. So today we've got a panel which is Advancing UDL, Navigating the Journey of Institutional-Wide Implementation. So really fortunate to have some fabulous speakers with us. So we have, for those who have been here all day, we've got Thomas Tobin joining us. So I don't know if he needs any introduction really. He blew us all away. It's been fabulous to hear from him today. We have Sarah Humphries, who is an Educational Design Manager, the UDL lead at University of Sydney. We have the wonderful and delightful, bubbly and bright Elizabeth Hutchins, and I probably should have said that about Sarah, but Sarah's more calm. I don't know you well enough. Anyway, but Sarah, Elizabeth Hitchens is a seasonal academic, inclusive education at Griffith University. We have John Fadoulis, who is the lead Universal Design TAFE from New South Wales, who is also online with us. So hi, John, thank you. And we have Laura Rafferty, who is the Associate Director of Equity and Inclusion, RMIT at University. And I really have to thank panel members. We pivoted. We had an hour-long presentation pull out a week ago. So these people have all just pivoted and joined us. So I'm very excited that they've done that. And in some ways, I think it's a fabulous way to end the symposium. So let's head into the Q&A. I've got some questions to start with, but we will be really encouraging you to ask questions online and in person. So we'll have roving mics as we've done throughout the session. Jessie's up the back there. And then we've also got meeting chats that I'll go from as well. But I'm going to start off the questions. So we're really looking at that strategic implementation, I suppose, within your own institution or organisation. So over to the panel. What advice would you give to organisations who are in early stages of UDL implementation? I know we've had people that, who have really implemented it and some at early stages, but for those who are just starting out, what are some of the things you would recommend? So who's keen? Yep, Sarah?
Hello? Oh, yes. So when I was thinking about this question, one of the first things I thought was just reach out to other communities, talk to colleagues in other institutions, connect with networks. Don't be afraid to reach out to the networks in the US as well, CIDL, C-I-D-D-L, which is the Centre for Inclusive Design and Digital Learning. It's a great place to just put out questions and ask for feedback from colleagues nationally and internationally. I think the other thing, sorry, I've made notes, it's the end of the day. The other thing to do is to look and share stories of success. I think to get buy-in, Tom definitely talked about this in his keynote. It's what you want to do is to showcase to people how you can do this without it being overwhelming. And certainly for us at UCID, sharing stories of success has been a good way forward.
Excellent. Any other panel want to make a comment? Yep. Elizabeth?
Just going to test how my audio is coming through.
It's coming through beautifully.
Everyone's ears are intact. I think really on the back of what Sarah's just said, seeing those examples can be so crucial in building that confidence in what UDL actually looks like. For many of us, we may have come through an education system that may not have been particularly inclusive, or we may not have seen or felt what UDL feels like in practice. And it's really difficult to think about, what am I aiming for if you've never experienced it yourself? So seeing those great examples of practice can be really crucial in not just getting that buy-in, that purpose, why are we doing this, but also that confidence that you can actually do it. So just as an example, many of us might have heard that we need to be using visual descriptions of images in our presentation. And it's really hard to imagine how you can build that in really seamlessly. But then you see Tom's presentation and it's so seamless. It's so naturally built in. And from that role modeled example, it's very clear that we can do this in our own lectures and our own tutorials. So that confidence building through examples is really key. So I think Sarah's point on that's really crucial.
That's a good call, Elizabeth. And for those who don't know, we actually invited Tom probably a month or 2 months ago to actually do a presentation on how he presents, because we're really blown away by just the UDL approach he has to presentations. So I really encourage you to look that up on our website. So now that we're looking at, like that starting off, can you advise us on what are some of the major challenges that you've faced during a scaling up process or in your process of, bringing about some UDL practice or principles within your institution or organisation? So, Tom?
Yeah, this one is actually the reason that I'm writing my next book called UDL at Scale. A lot of what you experienced today, friends, is draft stuff going into the book. And it's all based on actual successes at colleges and universities around the world. The big challenge that every single one of them encountered was a leadership team who needed to be convinced that lowering barriers, accessible work, and inclusive design were actually priorities that required investment. Investment of funds, people, time. Let's face it, our leadership teams have finite amounts of resources to spend. And usually when they're looking at the budget, they're looking at fixing the roof on the building. They're looking at paying salaries and benefits. They're looking at the sort of nuts and bolts of running an organization. And inclusion feels aspirational, and we don't fund aspirational. So making the argument early in the process and concretely as we can to make a budget argument for why lowering these barriers is going to help bring more students in. That usually doesn't work, but help students who are already with us to stay with us. That's the argument that often sticks. And then the argument is after students graduate that they feel that their experience was a meaningful one where they belonged and they're going to become alumni donors and tell other people to come in. That's also not the strongest argument. The one that works is, okay, if students are dropping out or stopping out for various reasons, can we help them stick with us better? And then suddenly you have the ear of your colleagues. And I'd love to hear from our other panelists as well on this question, because you've got some examples to share.
Yep, over to you, Laura.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think what's been really important for us has been understanding the data and making comparisons between certain populations, for instance, our students with disability, and their access, retention, success, progression, and evaluation compared to other students. And where we're able to demonstrate that gap and say, well, we can only expect more enrolments of these students. The University's Accord is, I think, the great strategic and systemic imprimatur that we all need to adopt more inclusive practices to deal with that impending scale, the further massification of tertiary education. And so that's been really successful for us to engage in a process of building on our good track record in relation to inclusive teaching practices, embedding it within our learning management system, having the strategic leadership to arrive at a completely new strategic framework for our inclusion, diversity, equity and access efforts, which is getting a lot of resonance and traction.
Fabulous. I might hand over to you, John, now in regards to resources. What resources or support systems were the most valuable in laying groundwork for UDL adoption? I mean, John's one of these great people that come to our presentations and put links in, and he's been doing it today online. So, John, what kind of things have you used or could advise us on?
Yeah, hi. We've provided a lot of examples on how to do things, because when you just tell people you need to do this, then they don't know how. You can go off and do demonstrations, training for them, but providing examples is something that helps a lot. Other things we do are things like checklists. Like, we start small. We started with accessibility and had the checklist on how to make sure things were accessible, and we build from that to create many different options. We are always available when people reach out to us. It's always been a journey for everyone. So we had all sorts of trouble trying to get people to listen at the beginning. So when they come to us and they're ready, we take that opportunity. We meet with teams, we answer their questions, we make it a safe environment for them to ask any kind of silly questions that they may think are not appropriate. So that, all right, we can sort of, overcome any issues they might have. And we're growing that. We're creating short 2-minute videos at the moment. We've created a whole toolkit of with all different topics that can be searched, and we've got a whole bunch of other ideas coming up, like a spin the wheel for UDL +1 of, what can I do to add to this? Spin the wheel. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Or nah, let's spin again.
That's fabulous. I want it now. So I think we might have to do a webinar with John once you've done that to hear more about it. So thank you. Anything else from the panel about what resources or supports that they've used? It's okay. Yep. Sarah?
I was thinking just in terms of the people that I work with, making those connections not only within my team but across teams across the university. And one of the challenges I was thinking about for the previous question was UDL isn't something that's tangible, so it's not really a project or a product, but it is a process and a way of thinking, and having the people who are having those shared conversations with you and developing that shared language has definitely been really helpful.
And if you don't mind, one little sneaky thing to add on, friends online, during some of the breaks, some of the folks here in the room have come up to me and said, well, how do we actually assess and measure universal design for learning? And I think I'm stealing one of Darlene's questions here, but let me lead into it a little bit. Dave Eddyburn is a fantastic scholar, and he's written an article called "Would You Recognize UDL If You Saw It?" He suggests that if we are designing something to make accommodations, we should expect to see the effects only in the targeted population of learners. And if we are designing something to be more universally accessible, then we should expect to see the impact or effect across populations of learners. It sounds simple when you say it like that. At the same time, when people say, oh, we can't measure it, or it's very abstract, because you're absolutely right. And if we cannot measure universal design for learning directly, we can measure its shadows. We can measure the effects. And Lara, you talked about having the data about who is affected by the changes that you're making. We know how to control for effect sizes. Your institutional research people can help you with this immediately. So does that help move us in a good direction for the conversation? I hope.
Definitely. No, I think it's great. And I think following from this, I'm really keen to look at measurement as probably our next key topic. So I think that's something that we really need to move to. I'm going to move to questions now from the audience. I have lots of questions, but I know that you also have lots of questions and I don't want to hog it. So anybody got a question now for the panel? Oh, no, anybody online? At the back? Yep, thank you. So if you could just say your name and where you're from first, that would be great. Thank you.
Corrie in Sydney, a little association with Charles Sturt. Branding. How much influence does marketing for a university have on the way UDL looks and feels? Do they try to push it so that there's some subtle psychology happening with that?
Yep, so Lara first.
Our new idea framework is supposed to suggest creativity of ideas, the new, the innovative, the inclusive. And it has a tagline quite intentionally explicit, that is inclusive by design, everyone, everywhere, all the time. We talk about that tagline in every single presentation and communication. You might have heard our leaders talking about it today. They are adopting this language and the aspiration. And some of the other principles that we've embedded in that idea framework are about flexibility. We're not mandating the approach out in X college or Y portfolio by a certain time and date. We're saying you need to respond to your disciplinary context, to your student and staff population, to your understanding of data and all of those contextual factors, and also what you want to do to design an impactful set of strategies that will move things along for those target populations. It really does need to be grounded in your local context. But it is about that local response, the flexibility to design and implement that local response congruent with the aspirations and actions that we've outlined in our idea framework, so that collectively together, we might be doing different things at different times, but collectively we have a shared aspiration. We're moving in more or less the same direction over a very long time frame. We're being very generous in how we've set this out, but it is about that set of shared aspirations and that tagline, and people do seem to be adopting it and mobilising behind it. Of course, it comes from, on the back of years of, achievement, and we participate in all those external certifications and award schemes, and that's all for the good, so that it does feel like a shared value, something to be proud of. People tell me that they feel an inclusive culture and practice when they join RMIT. It's something that we do seem to be all jumping on and getting excited about. Not universally, of course. There's always challenges and so on, but we have set this strategic direction and it does seem to be embedded.
Brilliant. Any other comments? No? Yep. Tom?
Goodwin University. Look them up. That's that. He asked, who's doing the marketing? Goodwin University.
Okay. Excellent. Very good. So just a couple of questions online. How do you suggest we stay up to date with the latest tech to improve access and UDL? And things are changing, especially in the AI environment. So just any suggestions from the panellists. So Elizabeth?
I think we're all seeing technology moving at a really rapid rate, especially as you mentioned, where AI is concerned. Every week there's a new update or something new to get your head around. So, just a little plug that Darren Britton from ADCET and Joe Houghton, who operates out of the UK in Dublin, we've got a podcast coming together that looks at that intersection of UDL and AI and accessibility. And for me, AI is not necessarily my space. My space is in that UDL and inclusion space, but engaging in deep conversations with people who are working in those areas helps me stay up to date. And by the same token, if you have a community of practice and somebody might come in and say, well, we've got this happening at our institution, this is the new technology that we're adapting, this is something that we're seeing, it then is creating an opportunity for us to reflect on things that we may not have seen. Because, you're one person in one institution and there are so many things happening in so many different spaces. So communities of practice are a great place to start, and having those connections with colleagues.
Are we unmute?
Yeah. Sorry, we just had a technical glitch of muting and unmuting. So, yep, a question in the audience. Let's just mix it up from online and in here.
I'm just wondering if it's timely to be doing things like residencies. So we just heard from Helen Black, she's done a deep dive in a sabbatical. So although examples is good, sometimes actually someone doing a 6-month deep dive gives you the visibility. And we used to do residency. Someone would lob in who was absolutely focused on, say, a big UDL project and a partnership, and they would be on site, just there in people's faces and doing it for a period of time. And I wonder if that might be a model of sharing when someone has a project that we might get back into that kind of thing. Because I think my experience of various technology innovations is those sort of fellowships and residencies where there's someone there doing a known thing. It creates a kind of a focus for people to drop in, and people come right just in time when they're thinking about it because someone is there with that sole focus. Just wondering, is anyone doing it? Do we think it's a thing, or is it old? I don't know.
No on the hand? No, I mean, it's a fabulous idea. We have an organisation called the ADCET, it was NESHE, National Centre of Student Equity, who do have fellowships. And I noticed this time there was no one with a UDL lens, and not that there normally is, but I was hoping someone would put themselves forward. And also they have research dollars that we may be able to tap in. So I think people have talked about our community of practice that we do have, and maybe it's something we can address at that to actually start to look at some fellowships or some research. Sorry.
And Jackie has an answer in the chat.
Okay.
When people are wanting to have a focus in an institution on, say, first year accounting or whatever, like to get with that person and just really make it high profile and actionable, just can sometimes bring people together, have snowball effects. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, as much as I was challenged by doing a face-to-face event, I just know that bringing people together, it is just amazing what we can actually do connecting. So, and it's fabulous also people are connecting online. So thank you for everybody moderating the chat and connecting online as well. One of the other questions we had around intersectionality, this gets to me in sometimes my language and how I don't get it right, but how does UDL incorporate intersectionality? So does anybody want to answer that?
Again, referring to the new framework that RMIT has, it is intentionally intersectional. That's one of the other principles that we call out because we think our previous plans have served us well, like a disability action plan. They've taken us so far, but a more holistic, nuanced, complex idea about our students and staff is actually required. And so that's one of the principles that we ask everyone who's participating in actions related to the idea of framework is both conversant with and enables within their doing. So we need to obviously provide the skills and resources of professional development around, well, what is intersectionality and how is it best lived out? And again, I think about examples and resources and case studies that we can draw upon. What does this look like in practice? But that is the calling to each of us, is to be alert to the many ways in which our students and staff are themselves diverse and how we can place in their way compounding intersectional barriers that we need to be actively attending to and dismantling.
Yep. Sarah, and then we'll go to you, John.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think the conversations we have about diversity are really important, and UDL can really help us move away from identifying people by labels, which happens because there's funding and that we need to be aware of certain groups. But UDL asks us to think about what are their learning needs, and then you can identify commonalities across different groups of learners. And I think that's a way that we can very positively and proactively address intersectionality. Excellent.
And John, did you have some thoughts as well?
Yeah, we're currently on version 2.2 of UDL. By July this year, we're expected to have the final published 3.0 version, and there's a lot there, like as well as having the why, the what, and the how, they're adding the who. So it's all about, I guess, intersectionality and looking at, I guess, the person itself, the learner, who they are, and also addressing biases in teaching.
Thanks, John. And I was going to actually throw to Elizabeth to actually say that, so you did it well. So thank you.
And one quick tip for everyone: if you're interested in people who are writing about this right now, Kavita Rao at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, Carolee Klein at University of British Columbia, and Betsy Barr at Wake Forest University are all doing research on universal design for learning and their impact on and intersection with First Peoples, First Nations, and Indigenous ways of knowing.
Excellent. Yep, and we've got a question up the back.
So one of the things that always comes up with UDL, inclusion, et cetera, is funding. A lot of the time this is supported by working groups, by people doing work outside of their own work, like outside their own job. Where does corporate responsibility come in, and where does this funding actually have to start coming from the top instead of just working on people's borrowed time? Sorry, it's an awkward one, I know, but...
Is this one of those? That's a good question.
No, this one actually has an answer, and the challenge is chicken and egg. The funding isn't there because it's not an institutional priority, and it's not an institutional priority because we're not funding it. And the challenge for us, excuse me, is to show concretely that inclusive work is part of our everyday responsibilities, not added on or extra. And the most powerful thing that I've seen institutions do is to put a date on the calendar and say, okay, we can't spend all this money or spend all this time or put all these people to retrofit existing things that weren't designed inclusively to begin with. We can staff up, train up, and start on July 1st that what we do will be accessible and inclusive. One of the challenges that I run into with leaders at institutions all over the place is they think they have to lead institutional change. That's not their role. Their role is to create the conditions for change to be possible. And once they switch that mindset, it becomes, oh, I need to fund people to do this work. So it's a step, and we could have another whole session on this, and I hope we will later on. So thank you for the question.
Yep, we're just waiting for the microphone to go to two people. So, yep, if you could just remember to say your name, please. Thank you.
Andrew, Workplace Injury Commission, Public Sector. Mine's more a comment to that question. So our priority in our organisation, led by our ELT, is around our Accessibility Action Plan, which is a evolution of our Disability Action Plan. So we've actually got external consultants that's come in and actually worked in the business, on the business. I'm debriefing her tomorrow on what I've learned today. Oh, sorry. Wow. Okay. That's loud.
No, still bring it close though. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. Because she's presenting the paper to the ELT on Friday. So I've got a meeting with her tomorrow to literally unload what I've written down here, because our organisation, you know, is community citizen, corporate citizen, corporate community citizen, whatever you call it, and really wants to make our workplace an inclusive workplace.
Thank you for that. That's great. So, yep.
Hi.
Yep.
My name's Emma. I'm a learning designer with Monash College. I guess one of the things I'm interested in, like within our team at the moment, we're really trying to adopt more co-design approaches to working with teachers, SMEs. And so, yeah, I guess my question's around that, whether there's any, when you have any interesting insights or experience in working with co-design approaches. And also I'm thinking about, you know, it's a very kind of grounded and contextualized and specific way of working, or it can be when you're working with like a particular academic in a discipline on a particular unit. And I'm wondering if and how it kind of connects to the point that you were making before, Tom, that about the importance of scaling up and having, you know, really simple 4 things that you're interested in at an institutional level. Thank you.
Anybody want to make a comment or no? Or no? So, okay. So questions still? No, a comment, Sarah?
I can make a quick comment to that.
Yeah.
I mean, the way we've been working with designing for diversity is very much a co-design approach or coaching approach or facilitate. We're careful with our choice of language, but the idea behind this is we want to engage with an academic, their co-coordinators, learning designers in their faculty or school, and engage with them over a period of time and have those conversations. We ask the questions, and we really want to steer them towards coming up with identifying the barriers for themselves and the solution that they think that they can work on. And this is where we really draw on your work, Tom, in terms of the +1, is take on it. We can brainstorm all the ideas of what you'd like to do, but what can you realistically achieve this semester in the time you have available? Most of our conversations happen before or early in semester. That's a lot of our planning, helping them sort of get to this idea of what's your barrier, what's your solution, and then checking in partway through to evaluate or to help them with some data collection, and then connect again at the end of semester. So, I mean, this is still very new for us, but we could say that approximately we would have 6 meetings with an academic over the course of a semester. The bulk of them, at least 3, would happen at the beginning. And the way we're measuring success of this process what we're noticing is we're starting to engage with the academics earlier before. So instead of 2 weeks prior to semester, we're now engaging several weeks or even a full semester in advance. So in terms of proactive design, we're very happy about that.
That's fabulous. And Elizabeth has also got her hand up.
Thank you. From my perspective as well, I think it's important in any co-design process to think about whose perspectives might be heard quite frequently and whose perspectives might actually be missing from that process. So if we think about student feedback, for example, we might have students who are very comfortable putting their name to a piece of feedback or identifying a barrier, but we might have a number of students who may not feel comfortable to do so. And those are the barriers that we may not be able to see. So thinking about ways that we can make that co-design process itself really inclusive, I think is going to be crucial to that point as well.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Now I've got a question up the back.
Hi, Mikala here from ACU, Social Work and Learning Design person. Bit of a lighter question for you, if I may. I've often noticed in conversations around UDL that it's quickly linked to disability, which makes sense because it has some of the origins there. What is your go-to metaphor, analogy, statement, example that you use to bring people back to the universality of UDL?
Great question. So,
I can do a quick one to that. It was, if anyone was in my presentation before, it's the photo I had of Kriya writing on the wall. What's essential for one is beneficial for all. It's not my line.
Oh, come on. Quoted by Sarah Humphries. Anybody else want to add to that one? Yeah, Thomas?
I asked them to look at barriers through the lens of their mobile devices. When we are away from formal spaces and places, we are often mediated through our phones. And the biggest barrier that we all have is the clock. We don't have time for study, for preparation. When's the last time you heard a colleague say, oh, I have to grade these 800 different essays? Who assigned that? That's a problem of our own making. And so when we show that there are barriers just beyond disability, suddenly we're talking about everyone.
Excellent. So I've got a question here, first, and then there. So Teresa. Yeah.
Hi, Teresa Dowding from RMIT Melbourne. It's sort of following on a little bit from what Greg raised about the corporate responsibility. Worldwide, there's more and more of a focus in the not-for-profit and the for-profit sector to improve diversity and equity and inclusion in the workforce amongst staff to get the most out of staff. It's possibly a more transactional focus to help, but it may have benefits. And there's more and more pressure on those corporations, and they pay big money to do the training, to do the research behind how that how they can best meet the needs of their staff workforce. Are there any universities in partnership with the corporate sector to look at how universal design outside of the classroom supports the workforce and making inclusive practice more universally applied, so that there is that partnership between the world out there and the university sector, and therefore we may also attract research dollars into the sector.
Yeah. Does anybody know of anything?
Just that, you know, in doing this work, it, I think, works best if we take a whole of organisation approach and we intentionally plan for both student and staff populations simultaneously, because so much of what we do in inclusion, diversity and equity is mutually reinforcing. And so we should, I think, always look for those opportunities to find those synergies. Certainly we have professional networks through the Equal Employment Opportunity Network here in Victoria, where there are, you know, employers who are sharing that sort of thing about inclusive practice, and we learn from those. We take an outside-in approach and we learn from those different sectors. I think, you know, it's all for the good if we're not insular and parochial in tertiary education.
Excellent. Thank you, Lara. Now I've got a question up there and then we've got one more, and then I'll take one online and then I'll ask the last one for the panel. So this has gone very quickly, as it always does. Just in the chat, someone's put a link into Katie Novak's video around dinner parties, and that's a really good way to reflect as well, that the reality is, you know, 20 years ago we would have served up the one meal, but now if we don't know who's coming, we actually give choices and options for people, and that's just, you know, that's just what we do now. So we'd hope that in our education it becomes just like that as well. So yeah, your question.
Yeah, I'm Susanna French and I'm from the ANU, and so I'm just kind of thinking about what Tom had said earlier about, you know, the whole funding and institutional priorities and trying to create the conditions of change to be possible. So I was just wanting to get I guess the panel's thoughts about the whole so ANU is currently in talks. It's not really happening yet, but it's just been something that's been going on about kind of increasing. Well, we've actually do have our personal development reviews updated now, that it includes service to the ANU community, and actually having it in the KPI. So there is an incentive to do these things if it's going to increase promotion as well. So it could be one step to cultural change as well. But I am also concerned that are people going to do this stuff for the right reasons? Because everyone deserves, you know, accessible education and all that, because it is all important. But you still got to have that incentive there. So how do we kind of put this sort of thing into practice without that ick factor, so to speak?
One of my dear colleagues is Nadine Zacharias, known to many of you in this room, and she uses the phrase of characterising herself as a shameless opportunist. And I adore that, and that is also my mantra, which is, frankly, I actually don't care about people's motivations. What we want to see is positive change in the direction that we want to see it, and incremental action is better than no action. Incremental action for the wrong reasons, as long as it's done appropriately and well and has that intended outcome, it's all for the good. So if there are, you know, that sounds like a significant step forward to me, you know, in terms of embedding it within professional expectations. That is a fantastic universal design approach, I think, towards signalling an expectation, but also rewarding the behaviour. And so that can become a virtuous cycle, and people may grumble along the way, but newcomers will be inducted into the expectation and so on. So I'm afraid I'm a bit more positive than you about the ANU in that regard.
That's fine. So actually, just Elizabeth wants to answer as well, David, and then I'll come to you.
I think it's a really good point you raise, and perhaps this itself speaks to that UDL approach, that one option or one motivation is not going to suit everybody. And so if we can present a whole range of possible motivators, then maybe we'll get more buy-in. For some, it'll be that they want to create that truly inclusive environment. For some, they want their students to be engaged and turn up to that last class. For others, they might want the gold star to say that they've done UDL, and why not offer a whole buffet of options to motivate people?
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. Next
Thank you,
question.
David Eckstein. I'm the lecturer in equity programs at Deakin University in the Office of Graduate Employment. And just a quick comment about the earlier question about employer interest in universal design learning. And from my experience, particularly recent experience, it's very much there and it's growing. Our colleagues in the Australian Association of Graduate Employers asked if we would organise a forum for them to meet students with lived equity experience so they could ask these students about their blind spots in the recruitment processes that they run to try to recruit these students. And there was a great deal of surprising learning, including the confounding interpretations that our students place on things like reasonable adjustments. And why would I ask for them? Because I just experienced neurodivergence and I don't know what's reasonable. Actually, I'm being unreasonable asking for this. I'm just asking because I can. I don't deserve it. And there are a number of other key learnings like that that our employer partners are very interested in, and I think they would make a great partner for future events like the next ADCET conference, ATENT conference, and
Excellent.
And our other organisations. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody want to make a comment to that, or you're right? So thank you. I mean, employers, I'll do another plug for ADCET, so please sign up to our newsletter. We hopefully will be launching a work integrated learning resource for the sector as well, which has the UDL lens right through it as well. So, and it's quite, I don't know, I just feel like we have to have some enthusiasm. Like we didn't get today right, and I'll be upset at points, but we also just have to have some curiosity about how we do things better. And we mightn't necessarily get accessibility right first go or second go, but we're willing to keep trying, and that's what we've done at ADCET. We've gone through our whole website with a lens. You can engage in it in 100 different ways, and we kind of, you know, if we have a webinar, we also have a podcast, we also have a transcript. It's just what we do, it's our footprint. So I really encourage you all to kind of come with some curiosity. So just got a quick question and then we'll go over to the last question.
So I'm a big Amy Edmondson fan, and I've just recently purchased a book around teens need to embrace failure to learn. And I think, you know, what I'm going to do today, out of today, is I'm gonna have a go. I'm gonna build my muscle. If I fail, I fail fast. But at least I know what I need to do and what I don't need to do. But I'm also going to reach out to the community today because I've connected with a lot of people here today and had really good conversations. And it's only onwards and upwards from that perspective. And yeah, just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Well, look, time is running away very quickly. I'm just going to quickly go to the panellists and just ask the last final question of just one takeaway or one thing that they've reflected on in the session today. So I might hand over to you, Elizabeth, first, and then John, and then come to our panellists on the stage.
Thank you. For me, I think one of the key takeaways is the power of collaboration. Not only do you walk away with so many key insights, but you're reminded that you are not just one person in this journey. You might sometimes feel like you're the only one pushing that rock uphill, but you've got a whole team of people at your institution, across multiple institutions across the world, who are all working to make educational environments a more positive place. So I think we can all be empowered by that. We're not alone in this, and we can draw on each other's examples and wisdom and energy to make this happen. So collaboration is key.
Thank you, Elizabeth. John?
Yeah, I echo those remarks, and I guess I want to bring up the UDL in tertiary education community of practice that we've got for all universities and vet sector across the country and growing. So talk to Darlene there at ADCET about it, and it's great hearing what everyone else is doing, that we're all starting at the same bottom place and we're slowly building up and we learn from each other and mistakes others have made. And I guess the other thing within the organisation, it's just, start small and build up, and everyone has got to go on the journey. Everyone's got to want to do the change. So work on the people that are ready, and then the others will just come along.
Great, thanks, John. Lara?
Variations on a theme, I think. I was just going to express my gratitude for the generosity of so many colleagues who I've had the benefit of learning from along the way, and the sharing that's been happening today and through ADCET and the magnificent job, of course, that ADCET does to support us all as practitioners and educators and researchers and leaders in how do we make this journey of tertiary education more accessible for the people, of course, that we care most about, our students. So it's really that there's such a diversity of approaches and where we are at the journey, but there's such great practice already happening, and an opportunity like this to come together, to have the coffee conversations, to meet new people and to share that practice is really inspiring. So just gratitude for that.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, my takeaway today was if I'm wanting to get the ear of the executive, the leadership, talk their language. So thank you for that.
Very good. Well done, very succinctly. So I gave Thomas the last word for us on our panel. So I'm going to hand over him just to give his reflection and a bit of a call to arms for us all.
Thank you. And I'm very grateful. All of the sessions that I experienced today, you are not alone. You're not doing this work in a vacuum. There are many other people around you who can support you, who are the people whom you should be emailing and saying, hey, I have this question, you're doing this work. You're also not only not alone, you're not starting from zero. You're building on existing strengths. You are working with colleagues who already know how to do these kinds of processes. They just might not be doing it for universal design for learning. But you know, I've heard a couple of people say, oh, I need to make friends in information technology. I need to talk to my librarians. Yes. The more that you can make an argument not from a niche position, not from, oh, it's just the person in disability support or accessible advocacy or learning design, but it's everybody. It's the registrar saying this. It's the buildings and grounds supervisors saying this. Then that becomes a stronger argument. If I had to take away 3 things as big pieces that I want to hear more about. 1, I want to hear more about the kinds of advocacy that you can do, not in your own institutions, but collectively across institutions, through membership organizations like ADCET, through consortia, through working groups. Our colleague who had the idea of let's make a fellowship where I can job shadow a little bit or learn more about what's happening at other institutions. Those are all ways to create a collective set of goals, values, practices, and requests. A second takeaway, you have a lot more power than you think you do. The work that we do is often invisible. I saw someone in the chat talking about how good design is often invisible to the people who use it. And that's absolutely true. So one of the big actions for us to take is to make things visible again for an audience who often doesn't think about the hard work that goes into just keeping things the way they are. And the third piece that I want to encourage everyone as a call to action is do one thing first. I won't presume to tell you what that one thing is, but you've heard 86 different awesome things to do today. You cannot do 86 things tomorrow. Which is the thing that will help you to lower barriers for learners, to advocate on their behalf, to take an action that allows you to move in the direction that you want to go? You know what that one thing out of the 86 things is, and I encourage you to take the energy from today and do one thing tomorrow. Now, before we wrap it up, Darlene has this whole fancy wrap up, but she doesn't know I'm going to do this. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our hosts at RMIT, our tech staff here, our catering here at RMIT, and Darlene and her entire crew at ADCET for putting on this event today. Fantastic work. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So thank you, Thomas. So while we were into the clapping mode, I'd just like you to put your hands together for the panellists. It was great to hear from all 5 of them. So thank you. You can leave the stage now. Thank you. I'm going to hand over now to Kate. So if you guys want to leave the stage, Kate's going to do a wrap up. I encourage you all to stay. It's going to be very quick, but I know some people have to catch planes, so I'll accept if you run away. But all right. So someone's put a great image up on the screen of, is it Grover or Cookie Monster? Cookie Monster clapping. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, you can keep your clapping hands out and to the ready. But I think the air conditioning is telling us that it's time to leave. So if anybody else is cold as I am, I'm going to try and keep this quick. Just as an admin point, there will be, so everybody registered today will receive an email link to the recordings. They will be available for 2 weeks. So you will be able to watch any of the sessions. In 2 weeks, sorry, in 2 weeks. For an indefinite period of time or? Okay, all right, excellent. So look out for that email in about 2 weeks' time. So I'd like to start by thanking everyone here and online as well for attending and for engaging with this fabulous symposium. Thanks to all of our wonderful speakers and especially to Tom for making the long journey out to inspire us today. Thanks also to Colin for his warm welcome to country this morning. On behalf of ADCET, I'd like to thank our wonderful sponsors, RMIT, the University of Tasmania, the Australian Tertiary Education Network on Disability, ATTEND, and also Equity Practitioners in Health Education Australasia. Thanks also to Jason and his team at Captify Live for their captioning work today. I'd like to thank the RMIT staff and others who volunteered to support us throughout the day, including Belinda, as well as the amazing IT staff who supported us effortlessly and constantly behind the scenes. You know, we really, it's been like an iceberg under the surface, I think, but thank you so much for making it so seamless. And finally, the ADCET admin team, Kylie, Debbie, and Charlie, thank you. And last of all, from all of us, I want to thank our amazing committee, Sarah, Justin, Darren, Elizabeth, Jackie, Teresa, Lara, and of course, Darlene, who have pulled together a spectacular event for us today. So thank you. And now some final thoughts from me. Universal design for learning is the practice that brought us all here today. But so much of what people have talked about today transcends specific pedagogical paradigms and instead represent the deep foundations of inclusive practice. Many of you highlighted the importance of early implementation of evidence-based universal designs, liking it to a UDL buffet from which all learners can choose. The examples shared today demonstrated how this approach empowers learners to customize their education to suit their needs. However, it's crucial to remember that UDL also supports learners we might never directly interact with. A few years ago, I encountered a group of incarcerated students who, despite their extremely limited access to learning environments and technologies, excelled in certain courses. Why? Because those same courses had been previously redesigned using UDL principles to accommodate learners with disabilities who shared many of the same access needs. Despite the value of a universal approach, we must acknowledge that a degree of individual tailoring is often necessary. This was beautifully illustrated by our presenters and commentators throughout the day. They emphasised the relational nature of learning and the importance of approaching these relationships with time, humility, and trust. The role of teachers, their empathy, and their lived experiences were also highlighted as critical elements in effective UDL. Finally, Tom's keynote and this afternoon's panel remind us of the importance of addressing our industry and community context, institutional stakeholders, and broader strategic goals for successful scaling up. At the beginning of the day, I predicted that you were already doing more in the UDL space than you realised. I hope you're leaving here today with a sense of accomplishment and with some achievable goals within your grasp. My personal takeaway came from Max and Marley's morning session to explore the interaction between UDL and local traditional pedagogies and to discover new ways of learning through country. Our quest for UDL will never be finished. As learners and learning environments change, so must our approach. So on that note, I send you off with good cheer to advocate, to be shamelessly opportunistic, and to infect all of your colleagues with the Universal Design for Learning bug. Thank you.